when you're in the midst of these dense, lush forests, especially the redwood forests that are just so rich with life and dense with life and lush with life, it's hard to remember actually the threats that are impacting them so direly and so severely. Right now we're here in Big Sur, in the redwoods of Big Sur, where just a few years ago, tragic fires came through and burned down so much of this entire range, causing irreparable damage, not only to the trees, of course, but to all of the species that live here, the insects, the animals, the other plant species. And we're seeing every year more and more of this here in California, especially in our coastal forests, coastal mountain ranges. Also, of course, the ones in the center of the state as well. It's impacting us all so severely because climate change. As climate change happens, as the earth gets hotter and hotter, where we are is getting drier and drier. And so whether it's a spark of lightning, whether it's a careless, irresponsible, or ill-intentioned person with a cigarette or an incense stick or a mismanaged campfire, that which could have been small and contained ends up literally ravaging hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of square miles of forest that has stood here for hundreds and thousands of years. And you may think, well, okay, so it's a tragedy, but like, how does that impact me? Well, spirituality has always told us how interconnected we are. And these days now, science is telling us how essential every single species, from a bee to a butterfly, to an ant, to a caterpillar, to a particular type of leaf or grass or tree, how essential every one of them is as a thread in the tapestry of our existence. And in the same way, you could look at, a wool sweater and say, well, okay, one thread is coming out, what's the big deal? But we all know what happens when you start to just pull that thread and suddenly your entire sweater unravels. Well, in the same way, the tapestry of human existence depends upon every thread being interwoven exactly in its place. And as we're seeing here in these forests that cool the atmosphere, these forests that absorb our carbon emissions, these forests that provide us with the oxygen that we need, they are being threatened by our carelessness, by our lack of attention to what's happening to our climate. And again, you may think, well, what can I do? And the truth is that with climate change, every one of us has the power to make a difference. Everything we eat, everything we buy when we go shopping, the cars we drive, how we travel, what we wear, all of it has the possibility to make a difference. For example, if we eat vegetarian, the amount of carbon emissions that are saved in a vegetarian diet. The United Nations released this huge report called Livestock's Long Shadow on how the livestock industry, the meat industry, is the single greatest contributor to climate change. So with every meal, we have the power to actually save the planet from climate change. The amount of carbon that gets emitted into the air if you drove your car for 3 straight weeks, non-stop, is the same amount that gets emitted through the production of a meal of hamburgers. So every one of us can contribute. That which we wear, where it was produced, who produced it, what factory produced it, what the emissions of that factory were, the waste that that factory spewed into the air, into the land, into the soil, into the water. All of this is interwoven into the tapestry of existence. And that is why, as we're here, sitting in these beautiful forests, filled with the lushness of these forests, we remember the fragility of them. And we remember how important it is that every one of us takes a step for climate change. Recently, there was just a new statistic that said there is a 40% chance that within the next 5 years, the Earth will become so hot that it will far surpass the outer limit that all of our countries had agreed upon in the Paris Agreement, just within 5 years. Why? Because we're not paying attention. Because we are so engrossed with our day-to-day desires, our achievements, our yearnings, what we want to own, what we want to buy, what we want to achieve, what we want to have, with the little nitty-gritty ups and downs of our life, that we forget. We forget how we are threads in the tapestry of life. And more important than who has a corner office, more important than a raise or a promotion, or who's in the highlight and the spotlight, more important than a little bit, a few pounds of weight we've gained or lost, who's saying what to whom, who's insulting us, who's respecting us, who looks good, who doesn't look good. More important than any of the things that fill most of our mind is how we can protect and preserve our planet, this water that gives life to this forest. When climate change causes this river to dry, suddenly the soil will no longer be able to sustain the life within it. No longer able to sustain the trees. Means they will no longer be able to give us the oxygen we need or absorb the carbon that they do. We live as interwoven threads of this divine and exquisite and precious and sacred tapestry of life. So whether it's going vegetarian, whether it's changing the type of car you drive, whether it's ensuring that everything you buy is produced by a company that is fair trade, a company that is working in alignment with all of our environmental rules and regulations, that is an asset to Mother Earth. Whether it's by donating our time, our money, our energy to organizations that are doing such wonderful work to protect and preserve our Mother Earth in whatever way you can. Step up, be that thread. You are the thread. Every one of us must keep this tapestry of our interwoven human existence sustainably, healthily, and peacefully together.